is you really need state-of-the-art equipment. You can't let this thing just...
Yeah, I'll tell you, we're looking to expand that whole department. I got to talk to you about that. Anyways, okay, folks, we're learning today the secrets of the Ten Commandments. Secrets of the Ten Commandments.
We're online.
You know, we have. Isn't it amazing? You know, you imagine you got the press release. Imagine you got the press release. God Almighty, for the first time since the creation of the world, is going to make a speech. Wow. I mean, would you want to be president of that speech?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm dying to hear it.
The CEO himself, right? The boss. Wow. You know, where you been for 2,448 years, but okay. A little late to the party, but we'll take it, right? So you get the press release. God is going to give a speech. Okay. Now you got to read the reviews. You know, the commentators. You know, you have all the presidential debates. You have all the immediately. You got to watch the reviews. This one won. This one lost. And you're. What did he say? What did he say? Seriously, don't kill. He didn't say don't kill. He said don't murder. He said don't murder. Don't commit adultery. Keep the Shabbos. Honor your parents. What is this? A kindergarten initiation class? Like don't kill each other. Don't steal, right? Don't be jealous of each other. Just play nicely. This is the message. You'd think he'd come out and he'd declare E equals MC squared. You'd think he'd say something profound, you know? Maybe Pythagoras. Yeah, but you'd think that God would say something, you know, that we could really, you know, ponder and meditate on. He said you shouldn't kill, you shouldn't murder each other.
And yet,
it's all anticlimactic, if I may say so myself, right? What exactly is going on over here? It's probably the most anticlimactic Parsha in the Torah, if you think about it. You know, God is giving a speech. We came out of Egypt. Okay, let my nation go so that they may serve me. Okay. We had such amazing shock and awe revelation miracles going on for the entire year of getting out of Egypt. Split open the sea, rained man out of heaven. This is an amazing show. And he finally comes out to the moment. Drum roll. Don't steal. Don't worship idols. Do not pray to the tree outside. Seriously. I mean, what is this? Okay. So let's take a closer look at the Ten Commandments. Here it is. It's page 439 in the book. No, it's actually 441. 441.
Yeah.
Okay. 441. We're getting close. We see Mount Sinai as a smoke. It's a nice word, a smoke. God cautions the people. Okay, let's go over the page 443. Then we start. God then spoke all these words. What did he say? I am God, your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slaves. Okay, gave us his business card. Very nice. I'm the guy. All right, very nice. Okay, next. You must not possess any other deities as long as I exist. Okay, so it's me and only me. Got it. Wherever I may be. Next one. You must not make yourself a sculpted image or likeness of anything that is in heaven above or on earth below or in the water lower than the earth. So basically saying, I'm really serious about not worshiping anybody else. Not joking here. Don't take any pictures.
Yeah, right. What about pictures and stuff like that?
Yeah, no pictures. That's what he's saying, right? Exactly. Good. You must neither prostrate yourself before them or worship them, for I am God, your God. He's doubling down here. He's very serious about this, right? I'm a zealous God for those who hate me, who remembers the premeditated sins of the fathers, of the descendants, in the third and fourth generation. Okay, fine. Then he keeps on going. He wants you to respect God. He wants you to observe the Sabbath, right? Those are the first 5 commandments. Then you got the next 5, which are the social. First 5 are religious. The next 5 are social. Honor your father and mother. The Hebrew is much easier to get. So honoring your father and mother. Then number 6 is not to murder. Number 7 is not to commit adultery. Number 8 is not to steal. Number 9 is not to bear false witness. And number 10 is not to be envious. That's a tough one, by the way.
Not desire
not to desire your neighbor's wife or his donkey, by the way.
His ox.
Yeah. You know what his donkey is? His donkey is like his Maserati. Shouldn't desire your neighbor's Maserati. But yes, that's an interesting one. How you're not supposed to desire, right? And let's go a little deeper into what's going on over here. So there's got to be more to this picture, right? It's so anticlimactic. It was the Maggid of Mezrich, the Rebbe of the Alter Rebbe, and the successor of the Baal Shem Tov. The Maggid of Mezrich was known as an unbelievable Kabbalist who explained this to us with a secret in the opening words on page 443. So when you go to those opening words, there's something very, very surprising. I'm going to do it in the Hebrew, actually, in the 442. Vayedaber Elokim, and Elokim spoke, et kol advarim ha'ele, all of these words, leimor, saying. Now, this is a very frequent verse in Torah. And Hashem spoke to Moses saying, right? We hear that all the time. And God spoke to Moses saying. So here, and God spoke all of these words saying, right? That word saying, what does it mean saying?
For you to be able to repeat
For you to tell it over to someone else, right? So when God spoke to Moses saying, the purpose was that God told Moses to tell this over to the Jewish people. By the way, Rashi says, from here we learn that you're only allowed to repeat something that you heard if the speaker asked you to repeat it. But if the speaker did not explicitly tell you to repeat it, you have no right to share it.
And it's between you and him.
Ain't that interesting, right? In other words, you can't say, well, he didn't tell me not to say it. It's the other way around. It's presumed to be confidential unless otherwise specified.
It's Lashon Hara.
Even if it's in public.
No, not if it's in public. In public, he's indicated, he's exhibited his commitment. You know, and what's in public mean? More than 3 people. If you said it in front of more than 3 people, then it's exhibiting his desire to want everybody to know about it, right?
And in public relations, everything is on the record unless you expressly tell the reporter that.
Public relations? What is public relations?
Like if you're giving a press conference.
Well, obviously a press conference. I mean,
no. Or you're giving an interview.
With the press?
With the press.
Well, obviously, because you're talking to the press, and the press
no.
is the megaphone.
But off the record, you have to right. You can say, "I want this off the record."
You're allowed to say,
it.
okay, because you're in a context of publicity, of public relations. When you're in the
context, having a conversation, with the reporter, then it's understood that everything.
Bear in mind, the reporter his job is to publicize what you're saying. That's a reporter. He's a reporter. That's his name. His job is to report whatever he sees and hears, right? But in a normal context, you're not allowed to repeat anything that you've heard unless it's been stated so explicitly.
A very important thing, very basic thing.
And I often say this, the great minds discuss, great people discuss ideas. Average people discuss current affairs. And simple people discuss other people. Right? Think about what you discuss. What do you talk about? Okay, so what then is this verse meaning when it says, and God spoke all these words saying? Who was present at Mount Sinai? Everybody. The entire nation was present at Mount Sinai. And that's what it says in the preliminary verses. That this whole thing, which is why God cautioned them, nobody's allowed to touch the mountain. It's very holy. You could die if you touch the mountain. Moses climbs the mountain. Everybody's there. This was an awesome event. Men, women, and children, the entire Jewish nation was present at the speech. Who was he supposed to be repeating this to? Who are we supposed to be repeating this to? Not only that, by the way, the Medrash tells us that all the future souls of the Jewish people, were all present at Mount Sinai. Our souls were there too. And Moses, whatever. So there's actually a Jewish dating site, a dating app called Saw You at Sinai, sawyouatsinai.com, which says we've met before, We've been together before. We didn't recognize each other, but sawyouatsinai.com is this dating app. Interesting name, right? So if not only that generation, but all future generations were all present at Mount Sinai, then who's he supposed to be repeating this to? Says the Maggid of Mezrich like this. That you can never appreciate this in the English. It's got to be understood in the Hebrew. The word devarim, these words, is representative of the 10. Now we translate as 10 commandments, right? And it's interesting, if you speak to some Christians, I've seen this in an article in the newspaper, Christian columnist, he writes, there's not actually 10 commandments, he says. There's only 9.
Right. First one's declaratory.
The first one, I thought it's a business card.
Declaratory.
Yeah. It's declaratory because the 10 commandments is a mistranslation. It's not commandments at all. Aseret hadibrot means the 10 statements. Yeah. The 10 statements were statements, right? Which is interesting. They're not being necessarily commanded. God had said 10 points, right? It was a 10-point plan. Now, you've got that introduction. There was another time that God made 10 statements. Do you know when they were? When was another time when God made 10 statements? This is very, very important. Nope. At the very, very beginning of creation. Asara ma'amarot,
Let there be.
the 10 utterances. Let there be. Yehi, or let there be light. Let the earth sprout forth of vegetation. You can actually see them if you want to take a quick look at them. I mean, they're not listed explicitly, but we can try to identify them. If you go to page 5 in the book. Actually, I'm going to do it in the Hebrew, page 4. Here, page 4. If you go to the third line, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, and God said, let there be light. That's number 1. Then if you go further down that page 4, it says, what line is that?
6. Let there be sky in the midst of the
Yeah, Vayomer Elokim, line, the second last line, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Rakia B'soch hamayim. Let there be a heaven, a sky, but amongst the waters, and let it separate between the waters above and the waters below, right? And it goes on every day of creation. There's a Vayomer Elokim on page 6, 5th line, Vayomer Elokim, Tad she'aretz desha, let the earth sprout forth their vegetation, and so on. Every day of creation, you have an utterance where God says, let there be something, right? Now, it's interesting. God only made 10 utterances in creation. Everything now we've learned the doctrine of perpetual creation, which means that God continues to recreate every single thing that exists at every single moment anew. And that if God would cease to recreate every item at any moment, it would simply cease to exist, right? Now, if there was 10 utterances, then how is God creating this table? So the reason is because the Hebrew name of everything is manifesting of its soul. The Hebrew name of everything manifests its soul. What does a soul mean? It's the channel of divine flow of energy to create it, to sustain it. So, for example, if you have grass is desha. Desha is grass is one of the 10 utterances. So that's a direct power surge of energy creating all the grass on the face of the earth, right? But when it comes to something like a rock is an even, aleph, bet, nun, even. There's no utterance that says, let there be stones, let there be rocks. So the way it works is that through the original 10 utterances need to translate. You know those games where it says like you start with one word and you got to change one letter at a time to evolve into another word? You know what I'm talking about? I don't know what those games are called. Yeah. You have a top line, you have a bottom line. How do you go from house to, you go to mouse, and you go to, and eventually change to something else, right? So what happens is that there are various ways to interchange letters. For example, there are four or five ways. A Wordle, it's called Wordle. Thank you, Terry. That's how you do it, right? The letters bet, vav, mem, and pei are all produced by the lips. Bet, vav, mem, pei, all produced by the lips. And that's why those letters are a family. They're interchangeable. The letters aleph, chet, hey, resh, and ayin are all guttural. So they're a family and they're interchangeable, right? So when you take the original 10 utterances, those power letters, you can actually interchange them like Wordle to formulate other words. Then each letter also has a number value, right? And you can switch from one word to another word using the same gematria, the same word value, right? This is Tanya, which describes how each time you do that, you're diluting the original energy. There's something called Rashi Tevis, which is acronym. You could probably apply that as well. There's another thing called Atbash. Atbash. You know what that is? Atbash is another like Kabbalistic alphabet. Atbash means Aleph. If you do the Hebrew alphabet from Aleph to Taf, right? And then you do the Hebrew alphabet from Aleph to Taf, from beginning to end, and then end to beginning, right? Then the Aleph corresponds with Taf, last letter. The Bet corresponds to Shin, the second last letter, right? So it's called Atbash, which means another relationship of the letters, right? Where the third letter of the alphabet corresponds to the third last letter of the alphabet, right? Gimel is Resh, right? So each one of these evolutions of the letters actually dilutes the original divine energy, the creative energy in the original infusion, to trickle down into the small individual creations. That way, everything which has a Hebrew name eventually traces its energy to the original 10 utterances. I learned the discourse. I couldn't believe it. I was in San Diego the other day, and I was learning a discourse from the Rebbe where he said, not only your Hebrew name, but even your English name is considered holy in this regard. So let's say, you sometimes you call to the Torah. I don't know my father's Hebrew name. My mother's Hebrew name is Justine, daughter of Charlene, right? Does that count for anything? The answer is absolutely yes, because that's the name. So that also is a Hebrew name. It's a very beautiful concept that I've explained in this discourse, right? So my point is, the name of something isn't just an identifying mark. The name of something in Kabbalah is the flow, the channel of its creative energy, which creates it and sustains it. Now, you with me so far, right? Didn't lose anybody yet, right?
A little bit.
Okay.
I took the Kabbalah.
That's okay,
course. I
but
sort
keep
of
going.
get it.
Okay, fine. So yeah, all right, fine.
You're
So
getting to a point.
all right, fine. So my point is like, so we got the 10 utterances of creation, right? Everything traces, anything that exists traces its energy to the 10 utterances. These 10 utterances are constantly repeated. That's the doctrine of perpetual creation. So you got a dual 10 at play. You got the 10 commandments and you got the 10 utterances. What were you going to say something?
Yeah, the two examples you gave, the grass you can find in the original utterance. From there.
Yeah.
And even the rock, God called the dry land earth, so the rock is part of the earth. But where is your computer for this table? Where it is?
So this table, the shulchan, it's a shulchan. It's going to come from one of those 10. There's a whole computing department up in heaven, which calculates all the accounting for every creation, that calibrates all the energies to source this table in one of those 10 utterances.
It's a composite.
Yeah, it's a composite, right? So anyways, so now that we understand that we have 10 utterances, now we can go back to the verse and read this verse again. With that introduction, let's go back to the first verse in 442. So it says, Vaydaber Elokim, and Elokim spoke, et kol hadvarim ha'ela, these 10 statements of the 10 statements, Lamar saying. The way the Maggid of Mezrich interprets this is that our role is not to repeat the 10 commandments, I'm going to call them 10 commandments, right? It's not to repeat the 10 commandments to someone else, but rather to infuse the 10 commandments into the 10 utterances of creation. Lamar is ma'amarim, the 10 ma'amarim, the ma'amarot, the 10 utterances, which are the building blocks of creation. Our role, therefore, is not to simply repeat the words that God spoke in Mount Sinai. Our role is to apply the words that God spoke in Mount Sinai, so that they become manifest in every physical component of this world. Lamar here does not mean to repeat or to relay. It means to apply into the 10 utterances. Now, this is fascinating stuff. Now you can understand. Okay, so you have a person that doesn't murder because he's a nice person, doesn't steal or commit adultery because he's a nice person. You have many Jews like this. They say, Rabbi, I'm a nice person, leave me alone. Is that the purpose? Tikkun olam, he'll tell you. The answer is no, it's not. It's not the purpose. The purpose is that you should do what you're already doing. Don't murder, don't steal, don't commit adultery. Do it because that's what God commanded us. So if you do it because you're just a nice guy, okay, you're just being moral. But if you're doing it because God commanded, now you're infusing holiness into this world. Does that make sense?
How does it manifest itself differently?
So the Rebbe spoke about the 7 Noahide laws. The 7 Noahide laws. So there's laws that apply to every single Gentile on earth. What are they? Quick run through these 7 Noahide laws. Not to murder, not to commit adultery, and not to serve idols. So idolatry, adultery, and murder, right? Not to steal, to set up courts of law, justice, right? Not to be cruel to animals, and not to blaspheme God, to believe in one God. Those are 7 Noahide laws, right? So the Rebbe said it was very, very important that when you speak to the Gentiles, many Gentiles observe those laws, but ask them why they observe the laws. You have to explain to them that you do them because that's what God commanded, not just because they make sense. Because if it's just a rational thing to do, you're not fulfilling the divine charter of humanity. Our charter, our mission is to make this world a holy place. So now we're going to go back to the anti-climax of the 10 Commandments, right? We go back there and we see that God says something which is so incredibly anticlimactic. We see that God is like, what did he say? That was like so simple, so simplistic. But then we realize that our purpose is not for God to blow our minds with something so incredibly profound that we say, wow, he's really smart. That wasn't the goal. The goal was for us to be able to build a home for Hashem in this world. How do you do that? By being mindful in your ordinary mundane actions. To say, I'm going to be kind to my spouse, not because I'm just a mensch, but because that's a mitzvah. I'm going to honor my parents, and that's hell of a hard. That's a really good example is honoring your parents because, the rational mind will tell you why you don't have to honor your parents. The rational mind will explain to you why it's really not necessary for you to honor your parents because they did this, they did that, they didn't do this, they didn't do that, right? Comes the Torah and says, honor your parents. Do it not because it makes sense. Do it because that's what I commanded you to do, right?
And that brings God into it.
Into the relationship, which is the belly of the beast. This is human hearts and emotions. This is the very essence of this world. I was talking to Simon Jacobson. He's we got a good evening message from Debo Jangles. Debo Jangles lives somewhere out in rural Australia. So good to know. What are you, Wednesday night now? Thursday night? Which week are you on? Great to see you, Debo. Okay, so, it's interesting. I was talking to Simon Jacobson. Simon Jacobson is a noted thinker, author, a guy I very much look up to, a very creative thinker. And I was talking to him recently about the Rebbe's directive to spread, or the Baal Shem Tov's directive. There was a beautiful story of Baal Shem Tov at the beginning of his spiritual journey. He was born in 1698. He passed away in 1760. But when he was 36 years old, I believe, 1734, he had a dream on Rosh Hashanah. His soul went up to heaven, and he went to the chamber of Mashiach. And he asked Mashiach 3 words. What would you say if you saw Mashiach? He asked him 3 words in Aramaic. Eimosai ka'asimar, when is the master coming? You know the story? When is the master coming? So Mashiach answers him in 3 words. Right, he actually used Hebrew, borrowing from Tanakh. He said, when your well springs will disseminate outward. That's what he said. When your well springs, which is the teachings of Chassidus, will disseminate outward, when everybody will know those teachings. So that's always been the mission statement of Chabad, is to spread the teachings of Chassidus everywhere, because that's what's going to bring Mashiach, right? When everybody's conscious. So Simon Jacobson was telling me, he says, the goal is not to print Chassidus. The goal is to spread it.
To be a Mayan.
Is to spread it. It's not enough to throw it at people. Here, I'm giving you 16 books here in the library, put it on your shelves, to collect dust for the next 12 years, right? It's got to be something that you can internalize. That's the goal. So it's not enough to throw the teachings at people. You've got to be able to allow them to marinate and to, you got to do it in a way. He was talking to me about it because we were discussing about, some of my frustrations about, what's out there. I don't believe that there's a good Tanya out there. Personally, I don't think that there's a Tanya out there that you can pick up that is user-friendly, that is, just easy to read. I'm hoping to be able to write such a book. Oh, and hopefully, we're just talking about it. So he was encouraging me to do it. And he said, He said, because the goal is not to just say, oh, well, we printed Tanya in 6,000 different countries. We printed 4,000 editions of Tanya. It's not about printing it in Uganda alone. I mean, there's a benefit to that too. But if you're able to teach it to the people, that's the goal, right? So you got to be able to internalize the message. The goal of the 10 Commandments is to be able to infuse sanctity and holiness in our most mundane activities. Our goal is not just to be spiritual people. If we were going to be if God wanted us to be spiritual people, he wouldn't have sent us to this physical world. We could have stayed as angels up in heaven, right? Didn't have to be born into this world in order to be able to make a difference. But the fact that, and we spoke about this in the class just yesterday in the JLI class about the mitzvah of being rich, is because God put us in this world is because he wants us to use money for a mitzvah purpose. He wants us to sanctify money. He wants us to sanctify the workplace, to sanctify our relationships, our most simplistic, mundane, moral, ethical, rational activities. When we do them for a holy purpose, now we're building a home for God in this world. Right? So that would be the secret of the 10 Commandments. And I just want to take it one step further. If you look at the next word, just take a look at the next word. Anochi. Right? Anochi. See that next word, Anochi? Anochi, the first word of the 10 Commandments. I. That word is not a Hebrew word. I think Rashi says. Rashi says, let me see.
It's not Egyptian.
It is Egyptian, yeah, exactly right. Anochi is an Egyptian word. Yeah. So the first word, imagine God's first word, the first word out of his, microphone was Egyptian. Like, what? He speaks Egyptian? Like, you're the Jewish God? Like, what? You think the first word out of God's,
He just came from Egypt, so he spoke Egyptian.
Yeah, but it's like, can you imagine? Imagine you came to a speech by, I don't know, the newest president of the United States. And the first word out of his mouth was in Somali. Right? Right? In Somali. It's like, what? God forbid. We should never have such an experience. Right? But think about that. Imagine the president's first words was in a foreign language. You'd be like, well, what's up with that? You're president of this country. You're the God of the Jews, right? The answer is that Anochi means I in Egyptian. Answer is because God is telling the Jewish people. It's very nice to talk in the holy tongue, but our goal is to teach Torah in English. Our goal is to teach Torah, to translate the Tanya into Persian and into Arabic so that it's everywhere. It's a very powerful idea right there.
Amazing.
What?
Amazing.
It's amazing, and for us who daven maybe in different languages, maybe you're not comfortable davening in Hebrew. Is there any value to your davening in English? I say, hell yeah, absolutely. Talk to Hashem in whatever language works for you. I mean, throw a little Hebrew here and there, be nice, But there's nothing wrong with that. God also speaks foreign languages. He created them. And in his opening word here, he says, Anochi, Egyptian. Right? It's okay to speak a foreign language. In fact, that's the ultimate point. The goal is to bring holiness to the darkest places. You don't have to bring holiness to the places which are most illuminated. You don't have to bring holiness to the shuls and to the yeshivas and to the houses of higher learning, right? Where you need to bring holiness is to Mirasol Country Club. You need to bring it to French's Creek, right? You need to bring it to Wall Street, to Main Street. That's where you need to make a difference, right? That's what the 10 Commandments is telling us, folks. Any questions?
The first.
Oh, I should before your questions, hold on. Another friend from Melbourne, Australia, Dale Jackson. Shalom, nice to meet you. Fran, I listened to one of your Tanya classes last night. You can do it. Very understandable. Thank you very much. Dale, applied meaning versus just teaching and explaining semantics and nuance of language in translation. Yes. All right, guys. Thank you very much, folks. I'm going to sign off of here. Have a nice day.
So is this the